The inside of coats.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and the penultimate round. It is the penultimate round this week of the VRRC Touring Car Championship. We have had 6 weeks of thrilling racing. The championship battle could not be more finely poised, and with just 4 20-minute races left to decide the champion, it is all to play for as we arrive tonight at Imola in Italy, one of my personal favourite racetracks in the world, and one that I'm sure is going to continue to deliver the thrills, spills, and great racing that we've come to enjoy over the previous 6 weeks. Andy McEwan here in the commentary box, joined as ever by Jack Oliphant. And Jack, I've got a real sort of a tingle of excitement within me right now, because not only is this championship, as I said, extremely finely poised, but we are arriving at Imola. What a place to come racing. This, I think, could be a really significant night of racing in the context of the championship.
Yeah, to be honest, for me, I think it was one of the best things to come out of the COVID lockdown calendar in terms of the Formula One is the return to Imola, and I think it's really good that it sort of shone a light on it, and a lot of championships are now going back to it. A lot of people know about it. It's a fantastic circuit and deserves to be on any calendar. And what a calendar we've had so far! Of course, we had Portimao, Paul Ricard. Spa-Francorchamps, that was a very eventful evening. Josh Martin certainly enjoyed himself there. Norris Ring was a very frustrating evening for a number of drivers. The Nürburgring, Barcelona, and then, of course, we're off to Brands Hatch next week to round out what feels like a championship that's gone on for quite a while, Andy, but that's because it's been so engrossing, not exactly boring.
No, exactly. I mean, we've crammed so much action into this championship. Some of the other championships that we've covered here at the VRRC have been slow burners. You know, the MX-5 one springs to mind, actually, where it started off and we kind of thought we were going to have, you know, a runaway favourite, and then actually by the end of the season it all tightened up. Others have gone the other way, but this one has been nip and tuck right from the word go. I think about 4 or 5 different drivers have, at one point or another, managed to hold the championship lead, and we'll see in a moment or two just how close the points are arriving here at Imola. It really has been one of the most exciting championships we've had here at the VRRC for a little while. Last week, we were racing at Barcelona. We saw 2 very, very eventful races there, and it was Kyle Felvers who came out on top over the night. He managed to win the first race from pole position, came from the back of the grid in race 2 to finish in a strong 4th place, whilst Eric Axelsen had a typical Eric Axelsen night, really. A 2nd in race 1, a 6th in race 2, nothing really to write home about, but he was banking the points, and he has kept himself well and truly in championship contention, and so too has Josh Martin. Josh Martin looked as though he might have been on course for a race victory in race 2, had to finish 2nd behind Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who got his first win of the season, but Josh Martin, one of, I think realistically, Jack, 5 drivers who are well and truly in contention now for the championship.
Yeah, and you can see how close they all are. We're not just building this up in that typical commentator style where they try and hype up the crowd for, you know, outside shots here, there, and everywhere. No, the top 5 genuinely are within an earshot of each other. Carl Felvers, Nicky Taylor, Scott Bugner, Eric Axelsen, and Josh Martin are the 5 drivers we have to be keeping an eye out on. As I said, Josh really dominated and came into the championship at around the Spa-Francorchamps sort of area. Scott Bugner was an early starter in the championship. He really came on strong as soon as we went into it, but it's sort of dropped off the pace in the last couple of weeks, and Kyle Felvers has thrown off his stigma of front-wheel drives. As I said last week, as Andy just said, he was the top scorer. So he's going into Imola with a high amount of momentum, I imagine. And we've got to be thinking, what are they actually racing for? Of course, we've got the prizes coming up, and we've got in 3rd place 24-inch Aegon gaming display, of course, accompanied by a trophy. In 2nd place, the 27-inch Aegon display. And in 1st place, the Aegon 34-inch curved gaming display. Now, I have the 34-inch. I'm not using it for commentating, but I do use it on my Simrace 5 chassis from VRRC. A nice little plug in there. I'm sure Rich will be very happy.
Oh, well done.
I know. Really smooth and not obvious at all. But it is on my setup, and it is top dollar for racing. So, yeah, really good prizes all up for grabs.
There we go. The check's in the post from Rich, I'm sure. But yeah, fantastic prizes. And a big thank you again to Aegon for being the sponsor of this VRRC Touring Car Championship. Well, it's almost time to dive into the on-track action. Qualifying will be getting underway very shortly. But before we jump into the qualifying session, let's take a closer look at this famous track.
Hello and welcome to round 7 of the Aegon by AOC Touring Car Championship Season 3. We're here for the penultimate track guide of the season at Imola. Heading towards the Tamburello chicane now, you want to brake as late as you dare, down 2 gears. Don't take too much of this curb as you don't want the car to bounce, but you do want to open up the radius of the corners as much as you can. It's all about finding that balance that works comfortably for you. Towards the Villeneuve chicane now, I find sacrificing this left-hander to get a good run through the right-hander is the way to go, which we do nicely here. Watch this Astro on the left-hand side as it can really pull you wide and give you a track cut if you go over the track limits. Tozer now, I find staying tight to the apex throughout the corner gives you the best run. Must be to do with the camber of the corner as we head up towards Piratella now. A little quick moment for the drivers to breathe and mentally prepare themselves for the next section of track. As we head into turn 9 now, we go down to 3rd gear, not using too much of this Astro on the outside for the same reason we didn't at Villeneuve. It's really deadly, the Astro on this track. Aqua Minerali now, really difficult corner to get right, but we avoid the track limits on the left-hander here. We get through smoothly. Up towards the Variante Alta chicane, really difficult to get consistently right, so you need to focus on finding a line where you can cut as much of these curbs as you can without getting a track cut or unsettling the car too much. Again, watching the Astro on the exit there. 2 more corners to go now. As we head down towards Ravazza, you want to make sure you're braking in a straight line so you don't engage the ABS or lock a wheel. Nice and easy 90-degree 2nd gear corner. And now turn 18, the final corner, you want to really focus on getting a good exit here. As going on to the long final straight, and then it's all about going up through the motions towards the finish line, taking the line of least resistance. And that completes a lap of Imola.
Well, the Imola circuit, hopefully you can see from that onboard lap why Jack and I rave about this place, because it really is one of the true classics. And despite the fact, Jack, that there have been modifications to the track over the years, safety related mainly, it still has kept that really old school challenging vibe about it, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why drivers enjoy it so much. We were just talking about the slipstream effect that's probably going to happen down the main straight into the first couple of corners, which are, of course, all chicanes, and they're not exactly easy either. They're quite fast and quite flowing, yet we've even seen the Formula 1 drivers like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton hit each other off in the wet, haven't we? So it's likelihood is we're not going to have a wet race because we don't do the wet races here at VRRC. But those 5 drivers all heading into those first couple of corners with the slipstream should mean we're in for a very exciting night. And as we've already spoken a couple of times, it is quite challenging. I think one of the best things about it, and that sort of old school feel we're talking about, it feels like almost like a Spa-Francorchamps, doesn't it, Andy, where you sort of in amongst the trees, actually, as Eric Axelson gives us a good onboard shot here, in amongst the trees, really sort of narrow, not narrow circuit, but the trees quite close to you, the boundaries quite close to you. If you go off, you're going to hit a wall pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, and I actually think a more interesting circuit than Spa, and I know that's probably a slightly controversial opinion, but Spa is very flowing and smooth, and you kind of go around a corner here, and you go around a corner there, and it all happens quite slowly. Here, it is bang, bang, bang. You've got you all over the curbs, the car sliding around. You've got to be really aggressive on the brakes. It's a proper driver's circuit, this, and I really do enjoy driving it, and virtually, you understand, and indeed commentating on races from here, which is what we'll be doing in about 6 minutes' time, because that's how long is left of the qualifying session. First representative laps coming in now, and a 1 minute 52.6 is the benchmark set by Eric Axelson. Eric arriving here at Imola, joint 3rd in the championship alongside Scott Bugner and Josh Martin, but those top 5 covered by just 8 points arriving here, and it's very, very likely that that will be jumbled up a bit as the night goes on. Nicky Taylor goes 2nd fastest. Nicky lost the championship lead just as quickly as he'd gained it a week ago, but only by a couple of points over Kyle Felvers, who is 4th and has just been beaten, Jack, by Andy Dorman. Now, Andy Dorman was going very quickly in the practice server, wasn't he? And he's straight onto the pace in qualifying.
I was going to note the practice at times, actually, because Eric Axelson was top in practice, so it's no surprise to see him up there, but he is still half a second away from where he was. Dorman, you're absolutely right, though. That is astonishingly quick. Now, he did have a lot of slipstream assistance there, didn't he? I'm not sure who he was following. Don't know if that was John Jones, potentially, who's, I mean, no offense to John Jones, but not as quick as Andy Dorman. So might have just got that last little bit that Dorman needed to just get those extra maybe tenth or two out of the time, but well in the top three. He's got a good tenth or so back to Kyle Felvers, of course, championship leader.
Yeah, true. So Eric Axelsen, who has not been on the best of form, one pole position only this season, and that led to his one and only victory so far at Spa a few weeks ago. But he has been sort of, he's never really looked like the fastest driver on the track, has he? But you don't have to be the fastest driver on track to do well in the championship. And that, if ever there was a driver who was going to be able to make a championship run through consistency as opposed to outright pace, it would be Eric. But we'll see what he's got in the locker here at Imola. As you said, he's a little way off his practice pace. He's pushing hard on this lap, as we saw out of the final corner, crosses the line, and it's a fractional improvement, but still only a 52.6. What can Nicky Taylor do? He comes across the line, doesn't improve. We do get an improvement from Ethan Hill and from Scott Bugner. Now, that's a lot more like it from Scott Bugner. Scott was one of the early season favourites, really did get out of the blocks very rapidly at season start, did Bugner. Then seemed to lose a little bit of that speed through the middle part, but that is a good sign that he's back at his best tonight.
Yeah, and for Scott, crucially, it's a very well hooked up lap in terms of the first two sectors were green and the last one was purple, so he can clearly sort of string a lap together, which is really important. Whereas Nicky Taylor, he did a slower first sector, a slower third sector, and a purple middle. So there's a little bit of inconsistency. He can't quite hook it up as well as some other drivers. So that might sort of work into Scott Bugner's favour. He can be a little bit more consistent. And he's just gone green in sector one again, actually. So look out for a potential pole position shootout between Eric and Scott. And, of course, a whole host of other drivers like Kyle Felvers and Joel Lask, who've just gone green in sector one. And Josh Martin, who just crossed the line, didn't improve. He stays in 7th place. But it looks like the times are starting to come down, Andy. And, well, actually, I'm slightly surprised. The drivers seem to have spaced themselves out a little bit. I thought there'd be a lot of drivers almost working as teammates to try and get that little bit of extra pace down the straight.
It's a funny one, isn't it, though, because I think Imola, I've always found it's quite tricky to follow closely around Imola because you have to be so committed into lots of these chicanes. If the car ahead stumbles slightly, that is your lap gone completely. So perhaps they've decided that actually the slipstream isn't worth enough to warrant taking that risk, and that's why they're sort of going it alone. Eric Axelsen almost always goes it alone in these qualifying sessions, and right now that's been the winning strategy, and he's improving again on this lap, at least in the middle sectors. Let's see what the end time is. A 152.60 was the pole position time. It's now a 25.4.
Wow.
So finds another 10th, or in fact 2 tenths there over not Scott Bugner, but Kyle Felvers, who with a slipstream from his HFT Racing teammate Nicky Taylor moves onto the front row as well.
Yeah, and Joel Lask jumps ahead of Scott Bugner. So Scott Bugner, we were just saying about how much better he's doing, and he's actually not all on his own, is he? He is in a little train of cars. So is Kyle, so is Joel by the looks as well, actually. Yeah, it's Joel behind Scott Bugner at the back end of that little train, isn't it? It is indeed. So as we were saying about drivers not using the slipstream and potentially going it alone, all 4 of those drivers pretty much do improve in a nice long line. Josh Martin, who's currently labouring down in 8th place, and what's he doing in terms of sector times? But he's got good sector 2. Sector 1 is not the end of the world. It's slightly slower than he's done before, but it isn't exactly a slow time. So let's see as he comes across the line. Can he crack into the top 5 and upset potentially Nicky Taylor? He comes across the line. Yes, he does. That was a good prediction. There's no way I could have guessed that one. But Josh Martin jumps into 5th place.
Yeah, despite what looked like a fairly scrappy final couple of corners, he was a bit sideways coming in, and he was all over the grass coming out of it. Yeah, Josh Martin going through onto what will now be his final lap of the session, has moved into the top 5. So of those championship 5, if you like, well, Axelsen on pole, Felvers 2nd, Lask 3rd, who's not really one of the 5 actually, is he? Joel Lask further back, he's sort of the interloper, but you've got Bugner 4th, Martin 5th, and Taylor 6th. They're all there towards the front, and again, the time's extremely tight. The top 3 covered by less than a 10th of a second. Now, what can Eric Axelsen do about that, though? He might be able to move the goalpost here slightly. A very neat and tidy run through the final couple of corners. Doesn't use quite as much of that exit curb as he did a lap ago, and then hugs that white line to get the shortest possible run to the finish line. He crosses the line just about with time for another lap, but that was not actually an improvement, so still only that 37 thousandths of a second in hand.
I think it was an improvement, but it was only by 0.004 of a second or something ridiculously small and probably not really. Well, it is relevant actually with the times that close, I suppose. As Scott Bugner comes across the line using a bit of a slingshot from Joel Lask, and I was having a look. Andy Dorman was on a quick sector 1. Whole host of drivers haven't been able to get another lap in, so the checkered flag has flown. So Carl Feldes won't be able to get a lap. He's in the pit lane, so is Nicky Taylor, Ethan Hill, Paolo Tempera, and Sam Zero. Yeah, Andy Dorman looks like he's gone into the pits as well, potentially, which is a bit strange because I thought he was on a quick sector 1. Andy Carroll, who's currently in 9th place, I think he's just jumped up to 9th place, actually, with 3 green sectors. So good lap by Andy right at the death to put him in the top 10.
Yes, indeed, just ahead of Jens Verhoeven, who was handed a penalty after the races at Barcelona, which dropped him down the order in the second race. Josh Martin comes across the line, stays in 5th position, but we've still got Axelsen, Lask, Bugner on laps, although Joel Lask we saw sort of sacrifice the start of his lap to help his teammate, Scott Bugner. Interesting, actually. Those two teammates were definitely working together. Oh, Scott has invalidated the lap now, Lewis Edwards tells us, so thank you for that info, Lewis. So he's not going to improve. It therefore looks a near certainty now that this man is going to claim his second pole position of the season. He's bailed from the lap now anyway, despite the fact that he was, I think, improving in the sectors there. But Eric Axelsen really doesn't seem to have any challenges in the late stages of qualifying, and a second pole position of the season appears to be his.
He's turning it on when he needs to, isn't he, Eric Axelsen? He did. I mean, to be fair to him, it was looking like it's not like it's been a bad season. He's just had Paul Ricard, which I believe was a bit of a blot in his diary, shall we say. I wasn't there covering that one, but Andy, I believe you were. Didn't he blow an engine or something ridiculous?
Yeah, he buzzed the engine on a downshift, didn't he? Which was, and after having had a spin in qualifying as well. So it was a bit of a night to forget that, wasn't it, for Eric? But no, you are right. He's not been slow. I think the trouble is that we've got such high expectations of Eric now, haven't we? Because of his dominance in the last couple of championships. Yeah,
it was he's his own worst enemy, really. Was it the Civic Cup that he won, and then he backed that up with an MX5 championship? Now he's on for a potential 3 in a row, a hat trick, which I don't think I've never seen it at VRRC, not in this format anyway. Maybe back in the League of Champions we saw that, but obviously they were only 4-week championships back then, and it was still very slightly different. So yeah, really good showing, and sort of history beckons, shall we say, for Eric Axelsen. But an advert currently beckons for us, and we'll be having a chat to our pole position man just after this.
Welcome back, everyone, to the VRRC Touring Car Championship. Qualifying has just been completed here at Imola, and for the second time this season, it's a pole position for Eric Axelsen. Eric, congratulations on the pole. That was a really competitive qualifying session. It did look there towards the end of the session like you might have been able to increase your margin, but we believe a bit of a track limits indiscretion meant you had to abandon the lap. But even so, a really strong start to your night.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was on for a even faster lap there at the end, but slightly over the limits. So yeah, I botched that. But yeah, it's crazy close here tonight. So and so much on stakes. I mean, just look at the standings. It's so close in the championship. So yeah, it's gonna be tough.
It is crazy, isn't it? I mean, we've been talking about the points being very close in the build up to tonight's races, but then you see the qualifying times, they're just as close as well. So it's going to be an intense night, I think, for us watching, let alone for you guys actually racing each other.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, feels good to start in the front. We'll see how it goes.
The last time you started at the front at Spa, you did manage to convert that into a race win. You could do with a win here, couldn't you? Just to really sort of put yourself fully to the front of the points. What do you think your chances are of doing that?
Well, it all actually depends on the other guys, I think, behind me, what they're up to in the first chicane. Dream scenario, of course, is I can just be fast off the line and I get a little a gap on the first lap. That would be a dream scenario.
Well, that sounds like a plan, Eric. We wish you the best of luck with that, and congratulations on that second pole position.
Thank you, Andy.
So Eric Axelsen then will start from pole, but Jack, he's going to have all of his championship rivals breathing down his neck, and as he quite rightly pointed out, a long run into that first corner where there can be drama.
Yeah, but Eric Axelsen, I mean, we say it every single week. We chat to him pretty much every single week, don't we, actually? It's he's got a knack of getting the car off the line, or any car off the line. Now, we saw it last week at Catalonia. He had to everybody else's standards, pretty decent start. It was nothing to write home about, but he didn't lose out any places. And he came in the interview afterwards and said he was quite disappointed with it. And so if he lives up to his own sort of expectations this time round, he should get into that first chicane without too many problems, because no offense to the likes of Carl Felvers or Scott Bugner, anybody else who are on those front two rows, we haven't seen them pull off starts like we have from Eric. So if he can just get his head down and focus on that, he should be okay for at least the first half a lap. But we do tend to chat to him quite a lot, don't we, Andy? I feel like we should ask him about how work's going, how family life is or something, because at the end of the day, we ask him the same questions every single week because he's doing the same job every single week.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, he's aiming for 3 championships in a row, having won not only the MX5 series that concluded just before the start of this one, but also the previous touring car championship, which was the hybrid touring car one make series. So we know he's good in these cars. Now, this is a different car. He's in the Lincoln Co. this time, not the Cupra. We're not running the hybrid. We don't have the pit stop races and the different tyre compounds. So in theory, a little bit simpler. And I think that is probably, Jack, why we have seen the field condensed so much, because we have simplified it. They're all on the same, they're all on a level playing field. We don't have different tyre choices and things and pit stop strategies to worry about. And I think that really has sort of condensed everyone together to give us this fabulous championship fight.
Absolutely, yeah. We're not saying that the other championships were in any way sort of bad ideas or anything like that, but it was a little bit more sort of to think about, wasn't it, I suppose? And I think here at VRRC we're constantly trying to find the balance between slightly new and innovative things while also giving the people what they want, and hopefully championships that we bring in 2023 will do exactly that. But you're right, I think everybody at the end of the day loves a touring car. They like driving them. They love the touring car action, because unlike when you get little bumps side by side, you don't go spinning off into a wall like you might do in a Formula 4 or an open wheel. They're fast enough and sort of mechanically grippy enough to have a little bit of fun with them. They're not all aerodynamic downforce and all that sort of thing, I should say. So, yeah, I think it's the perfect championship, and it's served up what might be the perfect ending.
Well, let's hope so, and certainly it is likely to go right down to the wire. There is no separating these championship contenders in the points or the grid, because we've got Eric Axelsen and Kyle Felvers sharing row 1. Joel Lask, the interloper, not really one of the championship frontrunners anymore, but he is the teammate of Scott Bugner, who is one of those championship frontrunners. Those two sharing row 2. Then Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor, the other 2 members of the championship 5, at the back end of the top 6. The red lights then are about to come on. The green car of Eric Axelsen to the left, the Lincoln Co., and on the right, the pink and white Audi of Kyle Felvers. Who gets off the line? Who gets into the first corner first? The lights go out, away they go. The rush towards the Variante Tamburello begins, and it's a good start made by Axelsen there on the left-hand side as we looked at it, and he's already cleared Kyle Felvers, so a typically good launch there from Eric Axelsen, and he will lead them down towards the first corner, then hard on the brakes, side by side behind between the two teammates, Joel Lask and Scott Bugner, who have had a bit of a history of coming together, thankfully avoiding that through the first couple of corners. Josh Martin slips in ahead of Nicky Taylor, and I think, Jack, they've all made it through Tamburello in one piece.
Yeah, and I think they pretty much made it in the same order that they actually started it as well, at least the top 6. I believe Nicky Taylor was behind Josh Martin anyway, because he got himself into the top 5, I remember. So it's a really good start by all involved. Exactly what Rich Hayden, the race director, would have wanted to see, as well as Andy Carroll, who started in 9th, just ahead of Jens Verhoeven, and he's in exactly the same place as Andy Dorman, just up ahead of him. Now I'm interested to see what Andy Dorman can do. We saw one flying lap from him. We didn't see much else. We didn't see many improvements through the rest of the qualifying. But this is a race. It's an entirely different prospect they've got to deal with now. It's all about how close you can get to the car behind, whilst also hitting your braking zones and making sure you don't brake a little bit too early, miss an apex because you might be going in blind to some of them, especially the chicane coming up. Hard braking zones, aren't they, here at Imola? Andy, we were talking about how it was a driver's circuit. It really does test you, but in qualifying and practice, it is a different kettle of fish.
Absolutely, and now you're nose to tail. If the car ahead has a bobble, you're going to run straight into the back of them, and likewise, if you make a mistake or get a slightly slow exit, as Andy Carroll just did, you will be under pressure heading into the next corner. Down towards Ravazza we come. The end of the opening lap, Andy Carroll under threat from Jens Verhoeven, who's late on the brakes, almost slides into the back of the Alpha, but they stay single file, they stay in the same order, and they're a little bit bunched up here, aren't they, behind Andy Dorman in the Golf, whose practice pace ultimately wasn't quite replicated in qualifying. Across the line they go then, 1 lap in the books, and we're going to have a good battle on here, I think, for 5th position. Josh Martin flashing his light, but actually it's Nicky Taylor who's applying the pressure, pushing him down the pit straight towards the Variante Tamburello. Hard on the brakes, Martin hanging on to the position then, but Nicky Taylor right in the rear bumper of the Lincoln Co, trying to shimmy him along before he does get too far away.
Do you think there was a little bit of a suspicion of working together there, or Nicky Taylor just not bothering about launching himself on Josh Martin just yet, maybe trying to catch up to the two teammates that are in 3rd and 4th? I just thought that maybe Nicky could have got his nose out there and had a look at the inside. Oh, that's exactly what he's doing now, into the hairpin. I don't know whether he was just giving them something to think about or whether that was an actual lunge.
Well, Martin had made a mistake, actually, going through the Villeneuve chicane just beforehand, and that sort of opened the door almost for Nicky, but ultimately wasn't quite committed enough on the brakes, which is rare for Nicky. We know he's good on the brakes, and we know he's a good overtaker and a feisty driver, but just couldn't quite find a way through. Riding on board now with the Hyundai Elantra. Down the hill they go into Aqua Minerale. My favourite part of the circuit when I get it right, but it's very easy to get it wrong and overshoot onto the runoff area. Nicky Taylor, though, absolutely nailed it. He's got the run towards the Variante Alta, looks to the inside. This isn't really an overtaking opportunity, but he commits to the inside line. Late on the brakes, over the curb. The track goes left again now, though, and Josh Martin gives him the hip and shoulder. And look in the mirrors, that is Ethan Hill. So Nicky Taylor from attack to defence.
Yeah, absolutely. Ethan Hill's all over the back of him. It's a great shot of an ambitious move, shall we say, as the three of them head down towards the penultimate corner. Is Nicky Taylor going to have to go defensive? No, Ethan Hill's not quite that close and not quite that stupid probably either yet in this race. Anyway, 16 minutes to go. You don't need to throw it all away once you've got an opportunity to catch up to the back of them. Andy Dorman, look at that. He's appeared out of nowhere. He seems to have dropped Andy Carroll somewhat and has joined onto the back of this little battle. But, crucially, Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor seem to have the last two corners sewn up, and they are probably the two most important corners on the circuit because it allows you to get onto this home straight, doesn't it, Andy? And that's you're flat out then for an awfully long time.
Yeah, and by far the best place to launch an attack is into Tamburello, so you need a good exit from that last corner to get the run down the straight. Nathan Blank was off in the background, I spotted. His Honda pointing the wrong way. There it is, the Aegon liveried car just rejoining in front of Sam Zero, who binned it at the start of qualifying. That's why he's towards the back of the field. But now it's Nathan Blank who rejoins right at the back. But remember, race 2, full reverse grid, so whoever finishes last in this race will start first in race number 2. At the head of the field, Eric Axelson doing Eric Axelson things, really, isn't he? He's nearly a second up the road from Kyle Felvers, but Kyle under pressure from Joel Lask. Now, interestingly here, Jack, Joel is ahead of his teammate, Scott Bugner. Remember, Bugner is the championship contender out of those two, and actually seems quicker than Scott right now. So his job now, I guess, is to go and harry Felvers, try and get past Kyle, and maybe hold him up to the point that Bugner can close in.
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, for Joel Lask, as a racer, as any racer, I suppose, you don't really want to play the team game, but you will if you have to. And he's doing exactly that because he's launching one at the inside. Oh, my days. We saw Nicky Taylor try that about a lap ago, and it had exactly the same result, didn't it? But it crucially held up Kyle Felvers, and legally as well. I don't think there was anything wrong with it particularly. It just was never going to come off. As Scott Bugner now catches up to the back of them both, and Joel Lask has played the teammate game to perfection there, I would say. Not doing anything particularly wrong, not sacrificing his own race entirely, but certainly holding up the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And Scott Bugner, who was nearly a second behind them half a lap ago, closes right back in onto the tail of his teammate. But actually, they both got a slightly messy exit from Ravazza too. And so they're now having to rely on the slipstream to close back in on the Audi ahead. That also has allowed Axelsen to really pull the pin now. He doubled lead on that lap from 0.8 to 1.6 seconds. And these three now absolutely tied together in the fight for second and third positions. Josh Martin keeping Nicky Taylor at bay behind, with Ethan Hill, Andy Dorman, Jens Verhoeven and Andy Carroll completing the top 10. So Verhoeven has found a way past Andy Carroll in the recent past to move into that ninth place. Down through the Villeneuve chicane they go, and things just calming down for the time being.
Yeah, I'm quite impressed. I'm going to just say this and hope that I'm not going to be proven wrong, as commentators quite often are, especially me, and say that I'm very impressed with Carl Felvers. If you think back, Andy, to I believe you've been commentating with VRRC for about as long as Carl Felvers has been racing with us. Potentially, Carl has been with us even a little bit longer than that. But it's back in the day when he first started, he would have seen half a lunge up his inside at any corner around Imola, and he would have crumbled. It would have been a bit of a mess, and it potentially would have sort of ended up at the back of the pack somewhere. But in recent weeks, he's grown a little bit more mature, I would say, in terms of being able to absorb that pressure. Now, I hope I'm not going to eat my own words here, but he's got a long queue of cars up behind him in a very pressurised situation in terms of championship, and he's not crumbling to it at all, is he? That's quite impressive from a young driver.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He is mentally as strong as anyone out there now, I think. Doesn't make many mistakes. Often, as well, when he was on the attack, things would go wrong, and he'd go for a bit of a 50-50 move that wasn't really on. And these are the mistakes you have to make in order to learn how to do it right. You know, you learn from your mistakes, and Kyle really applied himself to becoming a better driver, and that is exactly what he's managed, to the point that he is now every championship a contender at the front, no matter what the car is. And of course, it wasn't that long ago that he was bemoaning the fact that he doesn't like front-wheel drive, he's not very quick in front-wheel drive, and wouldn't have been too thrilled to see a touring car championship looming on the horizon. But now look at him, he's as quick as anyone else. Not quite got the ultimate pace of Eric Axelsen in this race, but that doesn't really matter, because if you can just hang on to this second place, that's good points in the bag. He's beating 3 of his 4 big championship rivals, but that is not going to be an easy thing to do, because look at the way Lask and Bugner continue to apply the pressure.
Oh, have a look at the background as well at Nicky Taylor lunging up the inside of Josh Martin, and I think he may well have had it. He's leading on him a bit, forcing Josh Martin out wide, but he manages, well, they're pretty much side by side, Andy. How are they going to sort this one out? Because it's a little bit, oh no, there we go. Nicky Taylor actually dives back up to just get that little bit of run and slipstream on Josh Martin for the time being. That's probably wise, because I don't think over the hill and then back down the hill is the best place to go side by side. But here goes Nicky Taylor around the outside and into Aqua Minerale. It looks like, yep, Josh Martin holds on to that position. Nicky Taylor's throwing everything at him.
He really frustrating though for Josh, because they were catching the 3 cars ahead as they were starting to battle, but they've now lost all of that time again through that little side-by-side exchange. But Nicky just not quite able to make that move stick. Meanwhile, Andy Dorman was up the inside of Ethan Hill, but again, not quite able to make it stick. So lots of drivers getting the overlap, getting up the inside, going into the corners, but they're not able to finish the move. Andy Dorman going rally crossing there as he heads down towards Ravazza. He's got the inside line, though. He's late on the brakes in the VW Golf. Ethan Hill, as brave as anyone else out there, hangs it tough around the outside and keeps the position. Fantastic.
Yeah, great stuff by Ethan Hill. Luckily, his wheel didn't turn off halfway through that corner, which is what we're used to seeing, isn't it, the championship? But yeah, really, really good car control by Andy Dorman to start with. I actually thought that the sort of dirt on his tyres might actually make him miss his braking zone, but Ethan Hill was brave enough in Andy's capabilities, shall we say, and the grip levels, hung it around the outside, and did brilliantly well to get off the corner in the lead as well. So yeah, 3 really good battles all within the top 8, I would say, actually. There's Bugner versus Lask, which is a teammate battle, so you're probably not likely to see fireworks, and if you do, something's gone horribly wrong. Josh Martin versus Nicky Taylor, and Ethan Hill versus Andy Dorman. Great racing.
Scott and Joel will thank you for saying that, but that's not entirely true, because they have made contact on at least 3 occasions that I can remember this season, much to Scott Buckner's frustration, I'm sure. But he has got ahead of Joel Lask. It looks like that was a sort of pre-orchestrated move. Joel Lask not able to find a way past Kyle Felvers, and so he's decided to relinquish the place to his higher in the points teammate, Scott Bugner, and see if he's got an answer for Felvers. But it'll be interesting to see their pace now, because what they don't want is to get delayed now that Bugner is in front, to the point that Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor start closing in. Both of them a bit scrappy there through Aqua Minerale.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a massive curb hit there by Scott Bugner. Just as you said, neither of them want to be held up, and I think Scott will have a lot more to think about now. It's easier to be the one chasing, but maybe they're starting to think of the pressure, not only that they're supposed to be putting on Carl Felvers, but the pressure that they might receive from behind. So Scott Bugner swapping and going ahead and allowing Joel Lask to be that buffer between himself and Josh Martin, Nicky Taylor. That might be the thinking behind the move, behind the switch. They're quite happy to Scott to have a podium position. That's not a bad place to be for race number 1. But what they don't want to do is drop down to 6th place. That would be disastrous for Scott in terms of how his last couple of weeks have been going. He needs to bank these points.
Absolutely, and he does have the benefit, unlike the other 4 championship contenders, he has the benefit of having a teammate who is not a championship contender himself. Josh Martin late on the brakes. Absolute demon move on the brakes, but he does make contact with Lask. They both run wide, and Nicky Taylor sees the open invitation to come through as well. So 2 places lost there for Joel Lask, but that was a very robust move. And I don't want to put words in the mouth of the race stewards, but I wonder if that one may be looked at after. The one thing that none of these title contenders can afford is a penalty for rough driving, and that looked a little on the rough side.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. I don't know if we'll ever get a truthful answer out of Josh Martin, but I'd be curious to know if that was Scott Bugner and not Joel Lask, would he have done it? Yeah, because I think if there was a championship contender there, maybe he wouldn't have bothered doing it, thinking, okay, I'm only losing a couple of points to them. But the fact that there was a driver who's not a championship contender, there's a buffer then, and he thinks, I need to get through them as quickly as possible to try and make up the most amount of points. I think there may be something in that. I don't think he just missed his braking zone. He definitely went for it. It was brave, but you're right. I think there might be a conversation to be had.
Just such a difficult move to make. If you've got an overlap already going into the braking zone, then fine. But when you're coming from behind like that, it's so easy to outbrake yourself ever so slightly and ultimately run the other car out wide. Now, Andy Dorman there was having another go at getting past Ethan Hill. It didn't work, and actually it might cost him a place now, because Jens Verhoeven's dragged up alongside him and is trying to go around the outside. Dorman late on the brakes, all over the curb and the grass on the inside. That's one way of defending your position, Andy. It didn't work though. He ran wide on the exit. Verhoeven goes through, and now Andy Carroll is there as well, and Carroll's going to get a much better exit from Ravazza too. The nice double slipstream from Verhoeven and Dorman ahead of him. So that's 8th, 9th and 10th, with Ethan Hill really now starting to break away from that squabbling trio. Here they come. Dorman trying to get back alongside Verhoeven, whilst also trying to defend from Andy Carroll. You see, Jack, it's not just those at the front of the field who have all of them. This is another really good battle.
It is indeed, and I thought Andy Carroll's rear end was just going to step out on him then, but it's managed to just keep in check, not needing to go on the naughty step just yet, and he gets ahead of Jens Verhoeven for the time being. Andy Carroll, I mean, what do you do here, Andy? Would you just sit there and wait? He's actually flashing his lights. He's trying to put even more pressure on the 2 in front of them, and to be fair to Andy Carroll, it looks like those 2 are going to make contact at some point, but at the moment, for the first half of this lap, or third of this lap, it's been very close, very respectful. Awesome driving from both.
It's been great to watch, hasn't it? But not if you're Andy, because Andy Carroll, that is, because you can see Ethan Hill disappearing up the road, and there's just no way through. It's a rolling roadblock. Bit of door banging there as they head towards Piratella. Now, this is a double apex left-hander. That should favour Dorman, but again, round the outside goes Verhoeven, and that is the second driver to do that to Andy Dorman. He's leaving them a bit too much space, I think, on the outside, and those Hondas clearly have good traction. So through goes Verhoeven into 8th, Dorman down into 9th. This is not going to plan for Andy Dorman on a night where he might well have been forgiven for expecting good results.
Yeah, it looks a little bit hard work, doesn't it? And he clattered over that curb on the inside, and I think he just hooked the wheels. And as Andy Carroll just goes straight on. This is a bit of a nightmare for me. I'm commentating with Andy on Andy, racing against Andy. It's very difficult. But it did look like that Carroll just decided to go straight on, and of course he didn't just decide that. He dropped the wheels on the left-hand side onto the grass, which is unfortunate. But for a lap there, we had some really good racing.
Yes. Andy Carroll has decided to make life a bit easier for you by taking at least one Andy out of the situation.
Thank you very much.
A rotation at the chicane. I'm not quite sure how he ended up pointing the wrong way, but he did. And that has unfortunately dropped him down into 11th place. Right, back towards the pointy end. And the dynamic's shifting again here, Jack, because Josh Martin's getting away from Nicky Taylor, who's got a resurgent Joel Lask, probably a fairly fired-up Joel Lask, starting to put the pressure on him. So Josh Martin, again, getting stronger towards the end of the race. This is becoming a trend with Josh now, and I wonder whether he might still have an answer for Scott Bugner in third.
I was just about to say about the tyre situation as Joel Lask throws it off the circuit. I'm not entirely sure what the tyre degradation is going to be like around Imola. I don't know what it is customary to be like around Imola in road cars, to be fair, or tin top cars, I should say, actually. But we know that Josh Martin and Catalunya, we jumped on board with him and had a quick analysis of his driving style, and it was damn smooth. So the likelihood is, if he is actually going a little bit quicker now and he's finishing the races stronger, maybe because he's holding on to the tyres a little bit better and they got a little bit more life about them, as Andy Dorman yet again just jumps over that curb a little bit too much. He had all this speed on Jens Verhoeven there, and it's been wasted within one corner.
Want to carry momentum through these corners. They're very sharp corners, but because you can use the curbs, you can carry a lot of speed through them, and by going in on that tight line, you scrub off far too much speed at the apex. That's where he's struggling. He's back up the inside again into Variante Alta. Well, that was plenty of curb on the right-hand side, and they leave each other again. Plenty of room on the exit, and Torman does to Verhoeven what Verhoeven did to him a lap ago. Goes around the outside of him and reclaims that 8th position. So that was a good move, a committed move. You can't have a half look the inside into the corners around Imola because, as I said, you pinch yourself too much going into the corners. You lose momentum coming off the turn. You've got to fully commit, get to the apex, beat the other car to the apex, and almost make it a bit of a block pass, and that is what Dorman did, and it finally worked for him. So back into 8th and already starting to pull away.
Yeah, he's got a good exit, didn't he? And I don't think Ethan Hill is really an attainable target right now, but top 8 definitely is. To hold on to that position would be a good end to this race. With 2.5 minutes left, it still is Eric Axelsson in the lead. You'd be forgiven for forgetting he was even in this race, but he is, and he's 3.5, well, not 3.5 seconds, but 3 seconds up the road from Carl Felvers. And Eric has been pretty much green every single lap. He's just gone green in Sector 1 again, in which I think he has the fastest sector of anybody in Sector 1, and he's still pulling away. So, yeah, he's absolutely flying. Carl Belver's still in 2nd place, Scott Bugner 3rd, Josh Martin 4th, Nicky Taylor in 5th, Joel Lask in 6th, Ethan Hill, Andy Dorman, Jens Verhoeven round out the top 9, which is really where the action has been, as Nathan Blank, who did well on over 250 laps in practice over the course of the last week, seems to have pulled over onto the outside of the road, which is a bit of a shame.
Nathan Blank then out of the race, it seems, and I can't quite tell, is that up near Piratella, or I can't quite tell whereabouts that is, but anyway, it doesn't really matter because he's going no further. And Nathan Blank out of the race. Oh, it's at the exit of the first chicane, beg your pardon, so he really hasn't made it far around that lap. The leaders are about to start what will be the final lap for them, though. 1 minute and 20 seconds left on the clock, but they're getting towards the end of this 10th lap of the race, so we're almost at the conclusion of this first race of the night. And Eric Axelsson, as Jack was saying, absolutely dominant so far in this opening race of the evening. Scott Bugner, though, has closed in nicely on Kyle Felvers. So Scott Bugner with some decent latter end pace in this race, and Scott, he's got a lap to do this, Jack. How much of a risk, though, will he be willing to take? He's already in a reasonably strong position.
I'm trying to imagine if it was me and not put myself in Scott Bugner's shoes, because he'd probably make a far more sensible decision than I would. I think I would have a look at going for this if I was up against Carl Felvers in the championship especially, just because more than anything, if you overtake someone on the last lap, it's a bit of a mental win more than an actual points difference, isn't it? Where you go into the next race and that driver's thinking, okay, this guy's not messing around. Like I don't want to get in his way. And look how close he is actually. Since you said that, Andy, since we've been looking at him, he's closed right up. And I think it's more Kyle slowing up than it is Scott Bugner speeding up, to be honest. Because look at Josh Martin. He's not exactly been dropped by Scott Bugner. He's almost, following him to join in on the party. If we had one more lap, I would definitely be worried for Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And this again is going to test that resolve, isn't it, for Kyle Felvers? He can't afford to make a mistake. Bugner really throwing everything at this, closes right in through Aqua Minerale, and on the run towards the Variante Alta, he might just try and again, weave to the inside, try and distract Felvers there, force a mistake out of the youngster, over one curb, over the other. Bugner a slightly neater line, but then the car just couldn't quite get the power down, could he? A bit of wheel spin as he accelerated off the chicane. There is one more realistic overtaking point to come, though, and that's at the bottom of the hill then, into the first of the Ravazzas. Felvers leaves the door open, Bugner goes for it, commits to the move. There is the inevitable contact, but Bugner has gone through into second position. That was a brilliant overtake, and Kyle Felvers will be kicking himself, I think, for not defending that a bit more. The run to the flag is on. That's going to be a drag race, almost a dead heat finish perhaps for second, but Eric Axelsen claims his second victory of the season. Who will be second, though, by 25 thousandths of a second? It is Scott Bugner after a last corner overtake to get ahead of Kyle Felvers, and how significant could that prove to be in the championship?
Tell you what, I know that as a rule, we're not supposed to sort of give our opinions on racing moves. It might skew the stewards. But I think that was a damn good touring car move, though, Andy. I'm going to break the rule. I think it was both drivers kept it on circuit. I think Kyle left the door open, maybe a bit of naivety almost. I think Scott Bugner, he had so much pace. I'm not surprised that he had a look. He saw it was open. He didn't have to do that much crowbarring to continue to open the gap, but there was a little bit of contact. I will give you that. It wasn't the cleanest thing we've ever seen, but it isn't exactly foreign to touring car racing, as we see Sam Zero going wide and John Jones exiting stage on left as we go into the final couple of corners.
If you want a guide on how to drive the final corner at Imola, it wasn't that. Both of them getting it rather wrong as they came to the flag. Right, we're going to take a very short break, after which we will hear from our three podium finishers. I'm quite looking forward to these interviews. Stay tuned, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. A very exciting first race of the night has just been completed in the VRRC Touring Car Championship here at Imola. A dominant lights to flag victory for Eric Axelsen, but some really good battling behind amongst championship contenders. And we can speak to our top three finishers now, beginning with our two-time winner now this season, Eric Axelsen. You've got a 100% record here of winning from pole position. Both times you've qualified on pole. You've taken a lights to flag victory, and that one really did look quite easy. Was it as easy as it looked?
Oh, I don't know. Imola is a tricky track, but yeah, it felt good. I felt I had the pace. I felt pretty calm through the whole race. So yeah, happy with the win.
Yeah, I mean, that's about all there is to say, really. You got a brilliant start, which we know you're capable of, and that's really important here because it is a long run into that first corner. So were you kind of confident you'd be able to arrive at the first chicane with the race lead?
Yeah, but I think Kyle was fast off the line as well. He was pretty close for the first laps. So I think Joel caught up with him after a few laps, and then I could just focus on my thing. And it's probably the most important race of the championship so far for me. So yeah, it feels great with the win.
Well, you've sort of answered my next question, because I was going to say that was a good time to win, wasn't it? It'd been a few weeks since you'd won a race. This is now really the run into the end of the championship, just 3 races left now. So getting that win, getting those points on the board, important, but you can't afford to relax. You've got to try and make some progress in race 2 as well.
Yeah, race 2 is always race 2. Every point counts now, so it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be fun.
It is indeed. Well, thanks for joining us, Eric, and congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Eric Axelsson, winner of our first race here at Imola. Second place, though, really, Jack, is where all the action was.
Yeah, and we'll get to that action in a couple of questions' time. But Scott, first of all, talk us through the first 97.5% of that race for you, because you and your teammate Joel Lask certainly looked like you were trying to work together in the early stages.
It's about time we worked together, eh? Yeah, no, it was just, I said to Joel before this race, just carry on. If you can get Carl and put it under some pressure, then go for it. And to be fair, I didn't even mean to overtake him where I did. I just outbraked myself, but luckily enough, he saw me. And then it was just sort of, head down, quali laps kind of thing, just to try and catch up to the back of Kyle. I noticed where I was a bit quicker than him. And then I had to go for it.
Yes, well, I will. One last question before we go on to you going for it. Is Joel happy to play the teammate game? Because it did look like he was trying to be quite aggressive on Carl in those early stages.
It is what it is. I think, he said he'll help you where he can, but he's paid for the championship, so it's, he's got a position to fight for in the championship as well. So, I'm glad and grateful that he helped me there and sort of pushed me along just to get me up to the back of Kyle.
Fantastic. Well, let's speak about when you did catch it to the back of Kyle. That last lap, last lap and a half, really. You were absolutely rapid, weren't you? Where did that come from? Talk us through it from your perspective, leading up to that move.
Sort of, I pushed for about 3 or 4 laps, then just sort of backed off a bit. And that's when I was trying to figure out where I was and wasn't quicker than Kyle. And then I sort of realised where I was, and that last sort of 2 laps is where I just put my head down and lights on, and I don't know if he made a mistake, but he just got onto the rumble strip on the exit of the last chicane, and it just got me a bit of a run. And I thought, do I go for it? Do I not? And I went out, braked sort of about the same time as him, and he's just started to squeeze me, but I was already there. And yeah, I got through and just held on.
So there was, from your perspective, everything completely sort of clean. There was nothing. You were always going to go for that one if the door was left open.
I mean, yeah, I had an overlap, so it's okay. He's okay to squeeze me how he did. I don't think he did anything wrong there. And when we got to the apex, he was turning in and I was turning in. It was just a bit of door handle above him, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for having a chat to us, Scott. We're going to have a chat to Kyle now, get his perspective as well. But congratulations on the second place.
Yes, well, there you go. We've heard one side of the story. Kyle, your thoughts on that final lap? It looked like you had it covered, but Scott was just coming at you with some real pace there.
Yeah, no, it was a great race. Scott had mega pace the whole race. I was just trying to keep it consistent, really. I wasn't going for extremely quick laps. Like in quali, I was just trying to keep consistent and stay near the front. I didn't want to make a mistake that just dropped me down. And then when Scott came to the move, like he said, it was a good move. He had the overlap, and then I gave him his room. And yeah, it's a really tight corner, so door rubbing is just inevitable, really. And then going through the down towards the start finish, it's just he got a better run. So
I'm slightly disappointed. I was hoping for some spicy interviews from you two, but there you go. Good to see that all is fair, because look, that's the way this championship's going to be, isn't it, Kyle? You've got to go for every chance you've got because the points are so tight.
yeah, of course. I mean, I'd rather third place than last place. So it's better in my case, and I get to start in front of him in reverse grid. So
indeed, which is less than a minute away, Carl. So we'll let you go and prepare for that. But well done.
thank you.
So Right. Okay. Not necessarily the interviews I was expecting, but actually, Jack, very quickly before this race starts, that I think is indicative of the maturing that we've seen from Kyle in particular over the last year or so, isn't it? That he can take a step back and sort of look at the bigger picture like that.
Yeah, I mean, before we were almost being careful about what we asked, so we didn't get a reaction. Then we were actually trying to get a reaction, and he was immune to it. So yeah, no, really, really good to see him sort of maturing in the track as well as obviously in the media. As we are we good enough to be called media? Yeah, why not?
I've been called worse, that's for sure. Here we go then. Red lights coming on the reversed grid race in Imola about to start. It's an all Audi front row. John Jones and Sam Zero. Who will lead them into the first corner? Let's find out. Off they go. Pretty even start from those at the front of the pack. Eric Axelson there just ahead of Nathan Blank, who has to start at the back because he was a non-finisher in race 1. Only the finishers that get inverted. And it's Jones who leads them towards the first corner for the first time. But look at Sam Zero. He's late on the brakes on the outside line. Jones takes a whole heap of curb on the inside. And now we hold our breath because they're 3 wide. That's going to end in tears, surely. Kenny Press on the outside. On the inside, Paul Laramie. Out of it all in third place comes Andy Carroll.
My goodness me, I was hoping you wouldn't throw to me because I have no idea how it's going to end in the background there. It's probably going to end someone with a very angry letter to the race steward. On the outside there, who's flying off the circuit? I'm not entirely sure. I think it's Paul Laramie, actually. Now, looks at the majority. Is it Josh Martin? Where's Josh Martin head off to?
Well, he's involved in that as well. Look, he's dropped to the back.
Oh,
so
wow.
Martin, there was something went on, and Andy Dorman was at the centre of it, and I think that somehow Josh Martin ended up getting fired off the track. So not good news.
No, the first headline for one of that headline acts, shall we say, has been written. It's about Josh Martin's early start to race number 2. He's going to have some recovery to do here, but it's not like the rest of them have really pushed through very quickly, I would say. Nicky Taylor's probably the best, the driver who's done the best. He's up to 5th place already, which is around where he was scrapping for in race number 1. So the fact that he's done about a third of a lap, and he's able to say he's around the top 5 is pretty decent going, I would say. Yes, it's Jens Verhoeven and Andy Carroll. Andy Dorman, actually. 2 drivers that were on our screens quite a lot in race number 1. It seems Mr. McEwan, because otherwise I'll get confused saying Andy too many times. They seem to be right in the thick of it again.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But what a start that is from Nicky Taylor. Whoops, Sam Zero out wide. Andy Carroll at the inside of him, but then round the outside goes Ethan Hill. Out wide goes Sam Zero. He made that a lot easier for them than he had to. Kyle Felvers running wide in the background as well. Almost rear ends him as Sam Zero rejoins the track slowly. But yeah, Nicky Taylor on a mission. We know that he can do this. Remember, he is the only driver this season to have won 2 races in one night. He did it at the Nürburgring, where he won race 1, and then from stone dead last on the grid, he won race 2 as well. Well, he didn't start last on the grid this time, and he is already into 2nd place. We know that he should be quicker than John Jones. A Nicky Taylor win here is looking like a near certainty, isn't it?
Well, getting past John Jones is not easy. He might not be the fastest, but he's certainly one of the strongest in defence, as Ethan Hill launches one at the inside of Andy Carroll, but Andy's not having that one lying down, is he? As he fends him off. And look what that means, Mr. McEwan, I'll say again, because it looks like as they go into the hairpin, there's a little bit of a cork in the bottle effect coming on here for Ethan Hill. He goes for 1 move, and he loses 4 or 5 positions as they go 3 wide.
I haven't been called Mr. McEwan since I was summoned in front of the headmaster like 15 years ago. I feel like I've been put in my place well and truly. Ethan Hill defending from Andy Dorman. This is for 5th position. Dorman right round the outside. And yeah, where are the other championship front runners? Well, Felvers 9th, Bugner 10th, Axelson 11th, and Martin 12th. They're just not making the progress, but this is going to change things. Dorman is sideways. He's collided with Andy Carroll, I think, who has exited stage left. And Kyle Felvers has got now Scott Bugner up the inside of him. So this is an important battle. Bugner up the inside of Felvers as they go towards the Variante Alta, and he tries to make a move on Andy Dorman as well. Lasky's coming through. There's a bit of contact on the apex. Dorman is sideways again, and somehow they're all still there on the other side. 2 by 2 down the hill, but it is Scott Bugner getting his elbows out and making progress.
Whenever I drive Imola, I can't make it through there on my own, let alone when there's 2 drivers next to me or in front of me and 3 behind. It's ridiculously good driving skill and awareness from these VRRC racers. Great stuff all round as we looking like there's going to be a change for the race lead. Nicky Taylor gets a good win on John Jones, and there it is. In fact, it looks like I reckon Nicky Taylor's pretty much going to have this one sewn up, but we will see how they head down into the first chicane as they go through the first corner. John Jones, I said he's not going to take it lying down. He's one of the strongest defenders out there, and he tries to give his full Valtteri Bottas on to Nicky Taylor, who fends it off and takes the hit and manages to go into first place. But here is the rest of the pack, and really where the story lies as well, I would say. Eric Axelson's gotten through on Carl Felvers and Scott Bugner. I'm pretty sure last time we saw this one, about 2 corners ago, Eric Axelson was at the back of this pack. Scott Bugner up the inside of Carl Felvers. No, he just comes back out of it for the time being as Eric gets a little bit away, I was about to say, away from the other drivers, but actually he ran too far into the corner, screwed up his exit, and he's getting rear-ended by Scott Bugner and Carl Felvers. Eric Axelson right in the thick of it.
Playing far too nicely in race 1, but the gloves are off in race 2. Axelson trying his best to hang on. I don't know what happened to Bugner, because he was at the head of this group half a lap ago. Now he's very deep in it, and his teammate Joel Lask has broken through into 6th. Remember, it was Bugner who was battling Dorman going through the Variante Alta last time around, so there's been a big sort-out down at Ravazza at the end of the previous lap, and that has resulted in the order now being 5th Dorman, 6th Lask, 7th Axelson, 8th Elvis, 9th Bugner, and 10th Josh Martin. So 4 of our top 5 drivers in the championship are stuck in the middle of this group, all of them outside of the top half dozen, whilst Nicky Taylor romps away at the front of the field. Now, Jack, that's John Jones running wide, so the ball gained a place at the expense of him. But, Jack, we said at the start of the season that this championship could well be won on the drivers' performances in the reversed grid races, and this really is Nicky Taylor showing everyone just how good he is at getting through the pack.
Yeah, and just how good Scott Bugner is at getting up the inside of that particular corner, especially on Carl Felvers as well. So there's a place swapped around, but I don't think very long as Carl Felvers gets a big shunt in the right-hand side of his car by Scott Bugner, who I don't think meant it, but maybe didn't expect Carl to be quite that close to him, as Josh Martin may take advantage and take 2 of them around the outside. I tell you what, Carl Felvers hasn't gained anything out of those last couple of corners, but he's probably very thankful that he hasn't lost anything either.
Yeah, that very nearly ended in tears, didn't it? Josh Martin then again picking up the pieces into 7th, but Felvers immediately goes back on the attack again as they come out of Tamburello. Josh Martin pulls to the left-hand side of the road to cover towards Villeneuve, and then just sweeps back over onto the racing line. Into the braking zone they go. The Lincoln Co ahead of the Audi, ahead of the Hyundai, and Scott Bugner and Carl Felvers getting very intimate indeed, and that is Nathan Blank and Sam Zero off. Sam Zero heavily into the barriers coming through the Villeneuve chicane. That will be his race over, surely. Wherever you look in this field, Jack, there is action.
Yeah, well, they said, was it Eric Axelson who said race 2 is what race 2 is? It's pretty much bang on the money, I would say. He's going to always be a little bit chaotic. It's going to give us something to talk about, that's for sure. It's going to give us some great entertainment. And normally, it gives us the standout performance of the evening. You said it before about championships being won on reverse grids. Well, that's very, very true for pretty much anything that we do here at VRRC, especially the sprint race formats. Back when we did the double distance, obviously that wasn't quite so applicable, so we didn't get quite the amount of stories. But here in the touring cars, it is all about how consistent you can be. And Nicky Taylor in the past couple of weeks has really shown that he can be not only very opportunistic and forceful when he needs to be, but he can be very calm and composed when everybody else throws it off around him in race number 2. And that's exactly what he's done. To get up to 5th place within half a lap and then to get to 1st after a lap and a half more is really very impressive.
Yeah, well, and this could be huge for his championship because we've become so accustomed over recent weeks to seeing these front runners, finishing next to each other in every race. They lock out the top 5 positions or 5 of the top 6 positions. That's what it was like in race 1. If he can finish this race with a win and a couple of other cars between himself and the likes of Axelson and Martin and Felvers and Bugner, then that could be a really, really big thing in the championship for Nicky. So this could be the night at which we look back at the end of the season and realise this is essentially where he won the championship. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We've still got half of this race to go, plus 2 at Brands Hatch in a week, and I already cannot wait for that final round of the championship. This one, though, has, I think, still got a few more twists in the tail as Josh Martin now locks up going into Tosa, but gets a decent exit from the corner, keeps Carl Felvers at bay. Carl continues to feel the heat from Scott Bugner.
Yeah, there's one of those classic situations when you're a 3-car fight, when you actually the middle car and it doesn't quite go your way for going for a move as Scott Bugner launches one on the inside. Carl Felvers really smart there, getting that cutback, trying to take advantage of the double left-hander, and I think he might just do it as well. Scott trying everything. These two are actually getting used to racing each other nice and close, aren't they, over the course of this evening? Normally, we see the likes of Carl Felvers and Eric Axelson come into the interview afterwards and wax lyrical about how nice it is to drive against each other. I think Scott Bugner's a little bit more of a headache to Kyle Felvers than he appreciates. But this is racing at the end of the day, and if nothing else, it's touring car racing, as it's that Scott Bugner just deciding that the second Apex wasn't for him and decided to make up his own track.
I think he did, yes, and if that wasn't track limits, I don't know what was, but it's worked for him. He's got a good exit, again looks to the inside into Revance, but you see now Felvers is wise to it. He knows that he just needs to push the braking zone a little bit later, and he should have an answer for Bugner, which he does. Nicky Taylor then with a 2.5 second lead now over Paolo Tempera. Now, this is another one of those strange nights for Paolo, where he just suddenly appears near the front in the reversed grid race, and then seems able to stay there. He has, though, got Ethan Hill and Andy Dorman and Joel Lask all over him. In fact, Lask was trying to go past Dorman, I believe, into the first corner. That's exactly what Bugner is doing to Felvers, and this time he does outbrake the Audi driver and moves through into 8th position. He is really strong on the brakes, is Bugner.
He is indeed. He's really given us something to watch, actually. Very entertaining. But look as Kyle Felvers tries to get one back on him again. Really good racing between these two, to be fair. I think Kyle is actually enjoying the challenge, enjoying the fact that he has to get his elbows out. And they're so evenly matched on pace as well. As Eric Axelson takes out Paolo Tempera, to be fair, that might be a bit harsh, as Andy Dorman has also had something wrong with him. So there's been something there as these two drivers, Kyle Felvers and Scott Bugner, go side by side. But we weren't even looking at them doing those moves because we were looking at the drivers falling off the circuit. And as they go up the hill, Andy, it's going to be Scott Bugner on the inside, but there's a whole host of problems up ahead on the road.
I'm going to lodge a complaint with Rich Hayden after tonight because there is too much action, and it's unfair to expect Lewis Edwards to be able to bring it all to us. Wherever you look, there's something going on, and now Bugner is sideways. He got it all wrong through Aquaman and Harley, runs out wide over the tarmac runoff area, and now Felvers gets the run on him again. Further up front, we've got Joel Lask into 3rd position now. Tempera is 4th. Axelson did not go past him, and I think that that was possibly to make sure that he was safe from a penalty, having made contact with the Honda going into the Tosa hairpin. Martin 6th, Bugner 7th, Felvers 8th, but those two keep on swapping positions. Verhoeven 9th and Andy Dorman completing the top 10. It is all kicking off, Jack.
Yeah, I think I reacted a little bit too quickly there, saying that Axelson had hit off Paolo Tempera. He hadn't. He's just given him a gentle nudge up the rear end and managed to just about stay behind Paolo, who may well be a cork in the bottle when it comes to the rest of this race. With 8.5 minutes to go, it seems that fireworks are about to be sparking off, Andy, I would say. But Ethan Hill and Joel Lask, they're having a fight of their own. But Nicky Taylor is 4 seconds up the road from second place man at the moment. We've almost forgotten that he was even in this race. It feels like so much has gone on since he got into the race lead.
Well, it has, but it's all been behind him, and that's the way you want it to be, isn't it? He broke through the pack in those early laps so quickly, and look, the others still can't make any progress. Axelson, the only one of the other championship contenders to have made it into the top 5, and he's struggling to get past Paolo Tempera. Josh Martin, Scott Bugner, Kyle Felvers, all line behind him as well, although Felvers does seem to be losing pace now. I wonder whether his car is maybe carrying a little bit of damage. Tempera wide at the Tosa hairpin, but that wide line gives him good traction heading up the hill, and of course, because he's racing against championship front runners, Jack, they are all carrying more ballast than he is, and on a corner like Tosa, that's really going to show.
Yeah, but you can tell how prepared I am, because that is actually, I've forgotten about the ballast. You can tell I haven't had a very good night in terms of remembering the running order or the fact that we interview drivers or anything like that, have I? But yeah, you're absolutely bang on the money with it. And Imola is a circuit where, in my opinion, the weight will hurt you, like the run up from Aquaman that we just saw there. You're not going to get the exit, and that might be why we're seeing drivers get moves thrown around the outside of them going into that chicane. Actually, just can't seem to get off the corner, and obviously going down the hill. I mean, Scott Bugner is probably the exception, but you're having to brake a little bit earlier because the weight will just carry the speed into the corner on this particular corner here, and it means you're not always going to hit the apex. Joel Lask and Ethan Hill missing the apex, and they can't use the word of weight as an excuse. They haven't got that much on them, but yeah, maybe why a few other drivers are missing the apex.
Quite possibly, and actually, just to go a bit further on that point, think ahead to next week. Well, Nicky Taylor, yes, he's on course for a win here, it seems. Yes, he's going to probably take a pretty healthy championship lead, actually, into Brands Hatch, but with that, he will take lots of ballast as well, so that's not necessarily what you want going into the final round. Meanwhile, Joel Lask up the side and nearly into the side of Ethan Hill's Honda. They continue to run door handle to door handle. There is contact coming out of Tamburello, and they're still side by side. The Honda with the outside line, though, has the momentum, keeps hold of the place. Right, what about Tempera. Tempera's got Eric Axelsen right on his rear bumper now as they head towards the Villeneuve chicane. That whole line of cars in the background, there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. That really is the championship battle, apart from Nicky Taylor, as Lask again has a little nibble at the inside of Ethan Hill, but just can't quite break through his defences.
No, and if we're talking about Nicky Taylor's advantage going into Brands Hatch, if it stays as it is, I will very quickly mention the fact that he has got pretty good record in terms of drop points as well. He hasn't had a disastrous round so far in this championship. Right, Scott Bugner at the inside of Josh Martin, though, is a little bit of rubber as Josh Martin tries to turn in and make the apex. Well, obviously, he's not going to be able to do it when he finds Mr. Bugner's car right in the way. Carl Felvers takes advantage of Martin running wide, just like Martin took advantage of these two running wide earlier in the race as well. So those guys have switched back as Eric Axelsen now might be trying to go around the outside of Paolo Tempera into the chicane, just like Ethan Hill is. Oh, sorry, no, Ethan Hill was trying to defend on Joel Lask there. What happened in the background?
There was contact again between Axelsen and Tempera. Tempera cuts the chicane and Axelsen's gone through this time, but there was definitely contact as they went into the Variante Alta, and this time it does cost Tempera not just 1, but 2 places. So he's now crucially splitting these 4 drivers. Axelsen and Bugner getting through, whilst Felvers and Martin are stuck at the back of the queue still. So that will be another talking point. Eric Axelsen, we know, is a squeaky clean driver. It does just so happen that he's made contact with Paolo twice in this race. Paolo's gone off again now out of Ravazza, so he loses all of those positions and drops down into 10th. That's a shame. It was a race that was looking good for Paolo Tempera, but in the middle portion of it, it's just started to unravel.
It is a bit, isn't it? Now, here's a question for you, Andy, because normally you like to throw me under the bus. 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. That's probably about 3 laps, I think. Well, roughly about 3 laps, actually. I haven't got the timings in front of me. Eric Axelsen, can he catch Ethan Hill?
2.6 seconds behind. It's a big ask, isn't it? Especially because he's got Bugner behind him. I think Bugner's going to really be trying to make life difficult for Axelsen here. So I think 4th might be as good as it gets for any of these drivers, really. It's not even like Ethan Hill and Joel Lask are battling and therefore holding each other up. So a tentative no on that one. But we've seen everything tonight, so I'm not going to take anything off the table. If it all does start kicking off ahead, then Axelsen and Bugner could close in. But really, this is the battle, isn't it? Bugner needs to try and get ahead of Eric Axelsen. They all have to accept that they're not going to beat Nicky Taylor in this race, but they do need to try and beat each other because that is still significant for the championship.
It absolutely is, and of course we'll bring you the championship update after race number 2. With the drop rounds, we can't do it between race 1 and 2 like we used to because the website just doesn't like it. So we will be able to give you the full rundown as it stands going into next week, straight after this one. So by all means, stick around for it to figure that one out, and we'll bring it to you as soon as we can. Eric, with 2 seconds now, he's dropped off 0.6 of a second away to Ethan Hill, actually, I would say, Andy, and 3 minutes to go. It will be another 2 laps. Scott Bugner's dropped off the back. You say a tentative no. I'm going to say a tentative yes, actually, as we see Andy Dorman think about a not a tentative yes, a full, wholehearted yes to going up the inside of Jens Verhoeven.
I tell you what, it's a good job these are virtual cars, not real ones, because Andy Dorman would need an entire new right side of his Golf, I think. It's a real mess, isn't it? And the left-hand side might be about to get a workover as well, because Jens Verhoeven's coming back at him now along the start-finish straight. It's not really a straight, is it? It's got these really fast kinks to the right and to the left in it, and Verhoeven does get ahead of Andy Dorman, who then throws it straight back up the inside into Tamburello, gets to the apex first, and they will run wheel to wheel temporarily, with Jens Verhoeven just hanging on. Paolo Tempera is the yellow and purple Honda just in behind them, trying to rejoin this battle that he was once a part of. But they've just started what will be the penultimate lap of the race, and yeah, I hate to say it, but Jack might be right here. They are definitely catching Ethan Hill here, aren't they, Axelsen and Bugner?
Yeah, no, I like to be right every so often. It's a nice change of pace for me. But yeah, you're absolutely, well, I'm absolutely bang on it. So I think Axelsen will actually catch him. I've gone from a tentative yes to a yeah, let's go for it sort of thing. And I'm going to enjoy the ride. So Eric, my money's on you, my good man.
Right, well, that's the kiss of death if ever I heard it. Now towards Aqua Minerale they go, right over the curbs. And Eric Axelsen, who is on top form in this race, didn't start off all that well. He's been involved in a couple of skirmishes as well, but he is now starting to look more menacing towards not only Ethan Hill, but maybe Joel Lask, because Joel is only 9/10 further up the road from Ethan. through the Variante Alta. Josh Martin's back ahead of Carl Felvers as well there. I'm not sure if we've covered that, but he did get it rather wrong through the chicane, so Felvers will close back in again on the run towards Ravazza. So too is Scott Bugner on Eric Axelsen, and this is what might save Ethan Hill, because now Axelsen has to turn to defence into Ravazza. One Bugner around the outside. Axelsen will have to leave him some space. And there's contact! Axelsen off into the gravel trap, and that was just one door bang too many. Hard really to apportion blame on that one, but Axelsen off the road, and Bugner goes fourth.
I didn't do it. It's not commentator's curse. No, I'm not calling that one. No, that was very dramatic. And that is something we haven't seen that much. I mean, that surprises us, which is a good thing, because we haven't seen many championship contenders take each other out like that. And, well, as I said, we won't apportion blame. That's not our position to do so when it's so tight like that. But, yeah, Scott Bugner, what we will say, is currently racing in fourth. He's thrown himself about a little bit so far this evening, and it's a great entertainment for the likes of us and you at home, I'm sure. But he runs in fourth. Josh Martin runs in fifth. Carl Felvers in sixth, and now Eric Axelsen stuck in seventh. So all of a sudden, we've gone from the battle for fourth to probably be the main championship talking point to potentially the battle for sixth place now in this race, because of course that is Eric Axelsen versus Kyle Felvers on the final lap of the race.
It is indeed, and don't forget that out ahead of all of them right now, Nicky Taylor by 7.3 seconds. I tell you what, if Nicky Taylor wins this championship, I think we can put a lot of that down to this race, because this was the race where he just got on with the job, got to the front and disappeared up the road, whilst the other championship contenders were a bit too busy infighting, and really they've been that focused on fighting each other that they've sort of let Nicky Taylor get away with one here, and if he takes the maximum points in this race, it will put him in a very, very good points position going to the Brands Hatch finale. But we've still got a couple of corners to go, and we know how much action we've had down into the braking zone at Ravazza, so this may not be the finishing order that we stick with, although they are just spreading out a little bit now. So far ahead of them all is Nicky Taylor, though, that he's already exiting the final turn. He weaves towards the line, and Nicky Taylor, for the fourth time this season, claimed the checkered flag in the VRRC Touring Car Championship. He is the winningest driver of the season by quite some way now, and he did that one in dominant fashion. Joel Laskin second position, Ethan Hill on the podium in third. That's a nice feel-good result. And then, provisionally at least, it is Bugner fourth, Martin fifth, Felvers sixth, Axelsen seventh, Jens Verhoeven, Andy Dorman and Paolo Tempera to round out the top 10. That race, Jack, I think we're going to be talking about for a while.
Yeah, I think we will be. I think the drivers will be, and potentially the fans at home, and unfortunately, potentially some of the stewards as well, because there was not loads of dirty driving, I would say. There's probably little bits and bobs in there where I'm sure there'll be discussions, shall we say, in the race debrief on Monday night. But a really good race, I would say. Nicky Taylor will just be beaming from ear to ear, and he won't have a care in the world about what everybody else says, because from our perspective, he got through very cleanly, and as soon as he was through, he drove away. Very nicely done.
Fantastic stuff. Kenny Press, the last car to come home then after a very dramatic race here. The reverse grid race, always exciting, but that one in particular gave us plenty to talk about. We'll start unpacking it all on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the VRRC Touring Car Championship. The second race of the night has given us plenty to talk about and may well prove to be one of the most important races in the context of this championship fight. It was a race that was won, though, by Nikki Taylor. A fourth victory of the season for Nikki, and that was perfect timing, really. That was the race where you sort of finally been able to take some big points out of the other championship front runners. We were saying during the race that you lot are always sort of tied together right the way through the race. You're taking a couple of points out of each other here and there, but that was not only a crushing win, but several positions ahead of those that matter in the points.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of at the start I was thinking about going on the inside, and then the minute it got to T1, I saw Joel and Andy were just like concertinaing up into almost like a bus stop. So I just went around the outside, and then I saw my opportunity with Ethan, and I just went through like a train and just went to Ethan, just go, and then we just pushed through, and I managed to get to the front and kind of thankfully got past Paolo because apparently according to like Kyle and that Paolo was beginning to make some sort of a train. So I'm glad I got past him when I did. And at the end of the day, I just got my head down and tried to do the fast lap, which then Joel annoyingly took. But at the end of the day, I'd rather Joel take it than say like Eric or someone.
Exactly. I mean, everything from a championship perspective really fell into your lap in that race, but you had to work hard for it. And really, the damage was done to your opponents in those early laps, wasn't it? Because you just sort of appeared out of the lap one chaos in about 5th or 6th place, I think. And from there, you just kind of had to pick them off one by one.
Yeah, I did. I mean, John was a bit tricky because I don't know if he hasn't got car radar on or whatever, but there was some questionable moves. I'm not gonna lie, but I got past him when I did, and I got past him cleanly, so I can't complain too much about that. But yeah, I just got through, got my head down, and when I got my head down, literally just kept going for fast laps, and then nearly ended up putting it in the wall in Agro Minerale on the last lap. But we moved past that marker, and yeah, and also well done to Ethan because his wheel actually decided to play ball this week, and he actually managed to like fight with Joel, which was quite entertaining to hear over the mic.
I bet it was. It sounds like that was a pretty entertaining race for everyone, really, and a great result for you, Nikki. Best of luck for Brands Hatch in a week's time. It looks like you're going to go there in a nice points position, but I think it's going to be a very, very tense final round for everyone. But well done anyway on a 4th win of the season.
Thank you. Yeah, 4 points isn't a lot, but I'll try and make that. I'll try and make the most of that, and hopefully get a better race one this time at Brands. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome stuff. Nikki Taylor, the winner of our second race here at Imola, but a bit like race one, Jack, a lot of the talking points really rotating around what was going on behind him.
Yeah, and just like race one, I've got an LB Motorsport driver to have a chat to about it as well. But the other half of LB Motorsport, of course, I've got Joel Lask. Now, Joel, there was an awful lot that went on during that particular race. You were a big part of it, your fight with Ethan Hill, amongst many other drivers. Talk your evening, you must be sweating buckets from this evening.
The tad. Ethan just kept putting it in positions. You could see he was white line, and you can tell he's a HFT driver for sure. Just trying to get past him was a nightmare, but I had to find the opportunity where I could, and just sent him into the little chicane piece, and just managed to make it stick luckily. But yeah, that was a tough gig.
Well, it certainly looked like it, but P2 is a pretty good amount of points to be coming away with it. I won't spoil the standings because it is very, very tight at the top end, but I would say you are currently, I know best of the rest sounds a little bit insulting, but compared to, you're in with an outside chance, I would say. A little bit of a miracle needs to happen at Brands Hatch. But did you really expect to be going into Brands Hatch with a chance of potentially upsetting a few characters?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everyone's got to put it in a wall both races for me to get there. But no, to be honest, I knew that my championship chances had dwindled throughout the season. So this was all just for a bit of fun, to be fair. And yeah, it was good fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good race.
Well, I asked Scott as well about the roles within the team. I asked him this after race number one. I'd love to get your perspective. Do you feel like you almost have to play the teammate role? I saw you having a little bit of a go at Carl Felvis in race number one, almost as if you looked like you were trying to just hold him up a little bit so Scott could come and have a little bit of a go. Is that sort of the role that you sort of feel like you've inhabited over the past couple of races, or do you feel like there's still a completely fair split and they're not exactly playing teammates at all? You just so happen to be running in the same team.
Don't get me wrong. Obviously, at the start of the season, it was anyone's game. But as soon as he started getting some good wins and points under his belt, it sort of turned into what I could do to help. So yeah, I mean, even in that one, I was definitely quicker than Carl at the start in the first race. And then I see Scott come up behind me, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to battle with him. He can dive up the inside, and I'll just push him along. And that's what I did, to be fair. And then obviously had that little tangle with Josh, which wasn't the greatest, but yeah, we'll reserve judgment on that one.
Yes, we will, because that's, of course, the steward's decision, and those at home to make their own opinion, isn't it, of course? But yeah, fantastic, Joel. Thank you very much for coming to have a chat with us. Congratulations on the second place, and you never know, we might be speaking to you after the couple of races next week.
Never know. Cheers.
Congrats to Joel for the second place finish then, just pipping in the closing stages Ethan Hill. But I've got a feeling that Ethan's still going to be pretty happy with a third place finish. That's more like it, isn't it, Ethan?
It feels like a race win to me because of how many issues I've had with my wheel, my internet, my PC, everything, and it's just made that podium so much more worth it.
Nice to remind everyone and to remind yourself almost that, you know, when things outside of your control are not sabotaging you, you are as quick as anyone out there. It's a shame that you've had that bad luck, but it must be a real confidence boost now to have a night where things have clicked.
It really is. It really is. I got a new wheel, so it may have been a new wheel luck this week. So, but I'm just really happy. As I said, it feels like a race win because I haven't really had an opportunity this championship to prove myself on how quick I can be and if I can be at the front. I've also got to apologise to Kenny because I did hit him off on turn one, not turn one, lap one. So we'll see what the stewards have to say. But I'm just really over the moon.
Yeah. Also, go on, Rick.
Andy, I'm going to butt in here as race organizer and award the driver of the round, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
So, Ethan, because you've had such a difficult few weeks with your wheel issues, we are awarding you for maintaining 2 races in a row without disconnection of your wheel and actually driving very well at the same time. Driver of the round this week. Well done, mate.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rich.
Well deserved. We all second that decision. Ethan, congratulations. And who knows, maybe this is the start of something good, and Brands Hatch will be talking to you again.
I really hope so. Thanks, Andy.
No problem. Ethan Hill then on the podium at the end of the second race here at Imola. Right then. That was a rather exciting race, and it certainly will have had a bearing on the championship. And I think we can hopefully drag up the championship standings then, provisionally at least. This is all post-event scrutineering, I know you said then. Judicial procedures is what I was aiming for. And well, it's a little bit more open than it was. 10 points now, covering the top 5 drivers. I think it was 8 coming into the night, so it's made relatively little difference. But it is Nicky Taylor, 4 points to the good over Kyle Felver second. Scott Bugner and Eric Axelson are still tied for third as they were coming into the round tonight, with Josh Martin in 5th. And then, as Jack was saying, Joel Lask on 191 points, a long way back. And I think perhaps because of the way the drop scores work, he might be a bit too far back. We'll have to break the calculators out. But Jack, a 4-point lead for Nicky Taylor. That doesn't sound like a lot, and it isn't a lot. But it's more than anyone's had for a little while in this championship. Could that prove decisive?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's done and dusted. We might as well just write off the last round. No, I think it's going to be very exciting, isn't it? We did a lot of build-up going into tonight. I don't know about you, but I personally thought after tonight it would be a bit more, maybe there would only be 2 or 3 drivers that are actually up for winning it. And I thought we were going to get rid of a few drivers, but actually, if anything, I think we gained maybe a driver. To be fair, I'm just trying to big that one up. I don't think we need to. Joel Lask probably really isn't in for a bit of a shout here, but it's just nice to include him considering he did so well tonight and he is within 30 points. He's sort of on his own though in 6th place, isn't he? Elliot Daltonaire, Andy Dorman, Andy Carroll, Paolo Tempera round out the top 10, but realistically it is between the top 5, isn't it? And they've got some great prizes coming their way wherever they finish, I'm sure. So it's been a good evening. Brands Hatch, I'm sure, will be just if not more exciting.
I mean, what better place to round out the championship than the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit? And that is where we'll be in a week's time. There you can see the calendar. We've worked our way across Europe, and we've come now to the birthplace of touring car racing, or at least the spiritual home of touring car racing, the United Kingdom, and the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, the 28th of December as well. So, you know those weird days between Christmas and New Year where you never quite know what to do with yourself and there's nothing but rubbish on the TV? Well, come to the VRRC, because on the 28th of December we'll give you some nice post-Christmas entertainment, and it certainly is going to be entertaining, that is for sure. So that's what's coming up then next week here at the VRRC. That's not all that we've got coming up there at the VRRC. Lots of exciting plans in place for the beginning of next year, and the next championship that we've already mentioned will be moving from touring car format to a GT racing format, the GTV Championship. It took me far longer than it should have done to realise what the V stood for in that. The GT Virtual Championship, utilising GT3 spec cars, and it's a very international affair, as you can see from the calendar. That will kick off on the 1st of February, and it's your pretty standard VRRC fare, really. Prizes up for grabs to be announced in the future. Live broadcasts from myself, Jack, and Lewis, and that is going to be really exciting. And Jack, there are the prizes that will be up for grabs.
Yeah, they've extended it out to 5th place, of course. There's only top 3 for this current Touring Car Championship, but we're going to 5 for the GTV3, and they're slightly shaking it up as well. They've got the direct drive from Camus. We've got the racing seat, of course. That is the GTF1 racing seat, which fits all VRRC simulators, as probably as well as a few others, whatever you've got at home, but hopefully it is a VRRC SR5 and 3. You've got the 27-inch gaming display, which is, of course, the second prize for the touring cars this going round. So our second prize is only good enough for 3rd in the next championship. That's how much better we've racked it up in 2023. And, of course, we've got the 2-hour driver coaching at VRRC and sim practice as well. That's 4th and 5th place prizes, respectively. You obviously have the driver of the rounds, pretty standard stuff. That's a medal for each round, nominated by us in the commentary team. Of course, Ethan Hill won it this evening. And there's also the prize draws. So if you compete in 7 rounds of the 8, then and you finish outside the top 5, so you don't win one of the main prizes, you get put into a draw and potentially you win 1 hour sim practice at VRRC, which is of course the equivalent of the 5th place prize. And I believe that may well be at the new VRRC Sims Center. More news on that to come on the social media channel. So if you want to see everything to do with VRRC, then please head over to the Facebooks, Twitters, Instagrams, you know, the sort of deals by now, to get all the info.
Indeed so, and indeed the Discord server as well, where everyone is welcome if you want to come and get involved in racing here at the VRRC. And perhaps racing isn't your thing. Perhaps you're more of a hot lapper or a time trial specialist, in which case we've got the competition for you, and that is our next time attack competition beginning on the 9th of January. So you've got a little bit of time to enjoy the festive period. But on the 9th of January, we kick off with a front-wheel drive tin-top time attack format, kicking off with the Fiat Abarth and Vallelunga in Italy, suitably. Then we head to Germany and the Oschersleben circuit in the Audi TT Cup car, the Alton Park Island circuit on the 6th of February onwards with the Mini JCW, and then the Cupra TCR on the Valencia Street circuit on the 20th of February. So a great mix of tracks there, but all front-wheel drive cars, and these are going to be continuing periodically throughout next year, always, I believe, with a new theme every time. So lots of exciting stuff coming up in the time attack.
Yep, and we're not done there either, Andy, because last but not least of the announcements or the things that we've got to look forward to is, of course, the special events. You will have noticed potentially that there's a bit of a gap before we get into the GTV3 after next week's finale at Brands Hatch of the Touring Cars. Well, that's because we're doing a couple of special events of the NASCAR sort, I suppose, from across the pond. We're going to Daytona, the Auto Club Speedway, and, of course, Bristol Motor Speedway. And we're talking about a few things that maybe makes the broadcasting a little bit different, a little bit special as well, to try and make those events a little bit more something of an event, shall we say, a bit more of a spectacle for you guys to come down and watch, and hopefully everybody enjoys being a part of as well. So VRRC branching out, shall we say, into the NASCAR world, and hopefully it'll be a rootin' tootin' good one.
See what you did there. Well done, Jack. Yeah, I'm particularly looking forward to that, I have to say. That's going to be a real laugh, the 4th of January, when that special event kicks off. Right, I think that's everything. That's all of the admin work done, and we can sit back, relax, and sort of prepare ourselves mentally for the decider of the VRRC Touring Car Championship in a week's time. So despite the fact that it's just after Christmas, we will be racing on the 28th of December, same time, same place, for the final 2 20-minute races. 5 drivers covered by 10 points. It's set up to be a real thriller. You don't want to miss it. We will see you all then. But for now, from myself, Andy McEwan, from Jack Oliphant, Lewis Edwards, Rich Hayden, everyone here at the VRRC, we thank you once again for joining us, and we will see you again one more time next week.
Woo!